Hey, this is Warren Redlick. Let's talk about Tesla Superchargers and how they're going to make billions of dollars for Tesla, especially with other electric vehicles starting to use the Supercharger network. Are you ready? Let's go! People have been concerned. I've heard a lot of people saying, oh no, if they open up the Supercharger network to non-Tesla EVs, this is going to ruin Tesla's advantage because other EVs will be able to access the Supercharger network. This misses a point. Number one, there just aren't that many other EVs in the United States of America. And you have to ask yourself, are you looking at this as a Tesla driver who wants free access or full access to Tesla Superchargers without those other EVs getting in the way? Or are you a Tesla shareholder who wants Tesla to make money, to generate a lot of revenue, generate a lot of profit? What I'm going to show you here is a few models, a few different ways of looking at Tesla Supercharger network to see how much revenue and how much profit they'll generate. And we are talking billions and billions of dollars, especially the further down the road you go. So let's look at this. First of all, Tesla is adding superchargers like crazy. Here's the most recent one, or one of the most recent ones. They added 16 stalls, that's 16 superchargers in Scottsdale, Arizona. So if you look at the tweets from Tesla charging, what you'll see is these are all the chargers they've added over the first half of July. They added about 532 chargers in just half a month. If that's an accurate rate going throughout the year, that would indicate half a month, 12 months times 2, 24 months. That would indicate they're adding 13,000 superchargers a year. And I didn't see any mention of China. So I think the number is actually higher than this because China is also deploying superchargers. And none of the first 15 days mentioned a Chinese supercharger that I noticed. So this number may be an understatement. So Tesla has about 34,000 superchargers as of the end of Q1, and we're in Q2 now. If they're adding 13,000 a year, then we're going to see Tesla go to like 50,000 superchargers soon, and then 100,000 superchargers isn't that far away. Another key detail here. Back in April, Ross Gerber from Gerber Kawasaki, his ETF is GK, asked Elon about the supercharger network and the gross margin. And Elon said, we aim for 30% gross margin or 10% profitability, all costs included. I think Elon is sandbagging here. I think Ross is closer to accurate, and I'll explain why as I go through this. So let's do some napkin math. I started with scenario 1, 40,000 chargers. And I just made up some numbers. Let's suppose you charge 20 cars a day. You make $20 a car in revenue. $10 of that is profit, gross profit. Not net profit, but gross profit. Net profit is more important ultimately. That works out to $400 in revenue a day, $200 in gross profit per day. That means $146,000 in revenue for each charger per year and $73,000 profit. And then if you go to company revenue, that means nearly $6 billion in revenue for the company and nearly $3 billion in gross profit. We'll take the net profit down to $1 billion. These are big numbers. And I think this is selling it short a lot. The tricky thing is when you look at the older generations of chargers that were, say, 72 kilowatt or 120 kilowatt, those aren't going to generate as much revenue. There's not going to be able to service as many cars because they charge slower. But since around 2019, Tesla's been deploying 250 kilowatt chargers. So the majority of chargers out there now are 250 kilowatt, and they're adding, so it's becoming a larger and larger share are 250 kilowatt chargers, which charge faster, deliver more kilowatts in a shorter amount of time, and generate more revenue. So another way of looking at it, you say they charge 30 cars a day, the average charger, and they generate $30 in revenue per car instead of 20, and the gross profit is $20 a car instead of $10 a car. Then you see revenue per day 900, gross profit per day 600 per charger, $328,000 in revenue a year from one charger, $219,000 in gross profit. That would be company revenue of $13 billion. We're talking about like this year. This year, superchargers could be generating over $10 billion in revenue. I'm not sure that's accurate. I don't know whether they do revenue shares with some of the places that host the chargers. Everything I can see, when they're at a gas station, the gas station gives them the space for free because the superchargers generate revenue for the convenience store and the gas station. Maybe there are some chargers where Tesla has to pay more or share the revenue, but I haven't seen that. I haven't seen anything yet that said that Tesla is sharing the revenue. I should also mention really quick that I believe Tesla's cost per charger to install the chargers is around $50,000. So $50,000 a charger, if the charger is making $300,000 a year in revenue, and you amortize the charger over 10 years, so $50,000 becomes $5,000 a year, it's a trivial cost. The amortization of the charger itself, the hardware cost becomes very small. So it's really just about the electricity consumed and maybe if they're paying for a lease, what the cost of the lease is, but that's probably also low. So I think that the cost for Tesla to deliver supercharging in dollars per kilowatt hour is very low, and the price they're charging, they're making significant profits on that money. So you can see here, that would be $3 billion in net profit, $9 billion in gross profit, and $3 billion in net profit. These are big numbers. And these numbers are not crazy, but I did modeled it a few other ways. Now I said, suppose they get to, this was with 40,000 superchargers, which is about where they're going to be average for the year 2022, right? So if you take it out and you say, what about 2023, and say they're going to have 50,000 superchargers, which I think is an underestimate of the number of chargers they're going to have, and you do the same math, basic same math all the way down to here, you can see company revenue in scenario one with the less optimistic scenario, company revenue 7.3 billion, almost $4 billion in gross profit and over $1 billion in net profit. And you can see with scenario two, you get to 16, where you're a little more optimistic about how much revenue each charger generates and how much profit it makes. Company revenue of 16 billion, gross profit of 11 billion, and over $3.6 billion in net profit. These are big numbers. This is potentially generating a lot of cash for Tesla. This is really good news. But let's look at it one more way. Let's go further out in the future, and let's say 100,000 superchargers, which is probably like 2024, 2025. I'm going to say 2025, we should see 100,000 superchargers. So you see 30 cars charged today, $40 in revenue per car, because the price of electricity is going up, the price of supercharging has been going up. I'm saying gross profit of $25 a car, and you work through the numbers again, you get $138,000 in revenue per year. You end up with $44 billion in gross revenue. You end up with $44 billion in revenue for the company in a year, in say 2025, just from superchargers. Gross profit, 27 billion. Sorry, the second column is Elon's tweet, where Elon said they're aiming for 30% gross profit and 10% net profit. So I have net profit being 1/3 of gross profit. And you can see you're still, in the conservative scenario, you're getting to over $4 billion in net profit and over $13 billion in gross profit. Supercharging can be a big part of Tesla's profit story for the future, revenue and profit story for the future. And adding other EVs, assuming other vehicle manufacturers actually manage to produce EVs in volume, which is an open question whether they can do that. If they succeed, and then we start seeing other EVs charging on Tesla Supercharger network, Tesla just makes more money on the supercharger network. They're not having a problem selling the cars. So from a shareholder perspective, this is gold. This is just extra money. Now let's look at a different way of looking at things. Instead of doing it the way I did it before and the number of cars and the revenue per car, I said, let's assume each charger charges for either 12 hours in this model or 10 hours in this model. And let's say the average number of kilowatts delivered over the course of a charge. You start at 250 kilowatts in a supercharger if you're down low, and as you approach 100%, it drops dramatically. But let's suppose that the average supercharger is charging at an average of 120 kilowatts. It's going to deliver 1,440 kilowatt hours, or 1.4 megawatt hours over the course of a day. If you say the price per kilowatt hour here is 50 cents a kilowatt hour and the cost is 35 cents a kilowatt hour, because we're trying to say that they're not extremely making too much gross profit, following Elon's approach. Then you get gross revenue $720 a day. You work through the numbers, and with 40,000 chargers on this corner down here, you get $10 billion in revenue and $3 billion in gross profit. So about $1 billion in net profit. Not far off the other scenario. If you go more conservative and you say, you know what, they only average 10 hours a day of charging at 100 average kilowatts, the numbers reduce slightly. You get $6.5 billion in revenue and $1.9 billion, almost $2 billion in gross profit. Now, there's another scenario where you say, what if Elon's sandbagging? What if it's 10 hours? What if instead of 20 cents, what if the gross margin is bigger? Because I think the electricity cost that Tesla is paying is probably around 10 cents a kilowatt hour. Maybe it's 15 cents a kilowatt hour. I don't know how you get to 20 cents a kilowatt hour, I don't know how you get above 20 cents a kilowatt hour. I'm not sure you can get to 20 cents a kilowatt hour. This means much higher profits, right? Because you end up with 25 cents profit per charge, per kilowatt hour. And again, if the price per kilowatt hour goes up to 50 or 60 cents and your cost is only 20 cents, these numbers go up. But you can see even with lower revenue, you can see gross profit, going up. Now, being more optimistic, let's suppose we got to 2024 and we say there's 70,000 chargers and we're taking the more optimistic numbers of 12 hours on 120 kilowatts. You end up with, same math going through, you end up with $18 billion in gross revenue. The 40K shouldn't be there. And over $5.5 billion in gross profit, or nearly $2 billion in net profit. And if you go with the 20 cents per kilowatt hour cost, which I think is more accurate, as in Elon sandbagging the value of superchargers, then you can see $18 billion in gross revenue and $11 billion in gross profit, which is approaching $4 billion in net profit for Tesla. So this is how you can see Tesla achieving really large profits on the supercharger network. These revenue and profit numbers don't compare to what happens if Robotaxi goes live, right? If the Robotaxi network goes live, that generates a lot more value. Even with Tesla expanding its car production and selling cars and making a profit on the cars, these numbers end up being a small contributor to Tesla's overall results. But it's not nothing. And it's, these numbers are more than what Tesla Energy is chipping in right now. So there's a lot of potential here for superchargers to make a big difference, drive Tesla's revenue numbers and profit numbers up. It's a really interesting question. I've tried to figure out, what's Tesla's contract like with Wawa, the gas station, or Buc-ee's, the large gas station? What kind of contract do they have? Are they getting a revenue share? Are they just getting traffic into their stores because people are parking at the Tesla chargers? I think that's what it is, because every time I go to a Wawa to charge, I go inside and I buy something. And when I go to Buc-ee's, I buy a lot, because Buc-ee's has interesting stuff. Overall, I think we can see superchargers are a big deal. Very excited to see this. Hey, just a couple notes I want to add from the Apocalypse Cabin before I finish this video. Keep in mind, of course, I may be overly optimistic. I talked with a friend who thinks I'm being overly optimistic about this. I suspect maybe my number of hours that the superchargers get used is a little high, and 8 hours might be better. In other ways, I think I may be understating the value. One of the things I forgot to mention in the course of the video was that Tesla's cost per supercharger is about 1/5 of the other companies when they make comparable superchargers. That it costs Tesla about $50,000 a supercharger to make them and deploy them, and it costs other companies 5 times as much, like $250,000. And Tesla superchargers get a lot more demand. Every time I go by some of these other chargers from these other companies, they're usually empty, nobody there, when the Tesla superchargers are full or half full. Very, very difficult economics for other companies to get into the charging business, but very, very strong business for Tesla. As always, please check out the t-shirts at elonbits.com. Tesla is the next Tesla. Superchargers are going to increase that graph right there. That's going to help us go up that graph, help Tesla stock go up higher and higher. So check out Tesla is the next Tesla t-shirt at elonbits.com, the Tesla Nair t-shirt, the Cybertruck t-shirt. I'm wearing the Cybertruck t-shirt right now. Check out these t-shirts at elonbits.com. Please support this channel on the Locals platform, Patreon, and the YouTube as a YouTube channel member. Check out my other videos, subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.